Princeton University's Keller Center, educating leaders for a technology-driven society.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Danner. This is one of these rare opportunities where a visitor gets the privilege of introducing yet another visitor. I'm a visiting professor teaching here this semester from the University of California in Berkeley. And I have the delight and honor to introduce our guest speaker this afternoon. But before I do that, let me pay homage and thanks to the folks whose generosity makes this all possible. First, the Keller Center, which was graciously endowed by Dennis and Constance Keller to create a center within the Princeton campus to encourage leadership in a technologically driven age. And the Keller Center is responsible for developing curricula, for bringing speakers on campus, for creating more of an interdisciplinary environment within which technology leaders of the future can become more conversant and fluent in the big challenges of our time. Also to thank the William Pearson Fund, whose generosity in particular has made Dr. Polak's visit possible. When I was asked to introduce Paul, he's an odd guy to try to introduce because he has so many facets to it. For example, if I were to tell you that he spent 22 years in psychotherapy, you might get the wrong impression. Even though he may need a little psychotherapy from time to time, he actually is a psychotherapist. So this is a fellow who began his professional career as a practicing psychiatrist, and his interest in the problems of the poor emanate from his insights into the difficulties of the mentally ill. He's also somebody who wrote a book, a quite well-regarded book, whose acronym is OOP, O-O-P, and I think to myself, now how could somebody create a title for a book called OOP? Well, it turns out that stands for out of poverty. And Paul is undoubtedly one of the world's most experienced and candid observers of what it really takes to solve the intractable, seemingly intractable problems of the global poor. He is a guy who blends both words, ideas, and actions together. Some of us may wish that during our lifetimes we may be able to change the lives of perhaps one other person or two other people or 10 or a dozen. You're going to hear this afternoon from somebody whose ideas have been directly responsible for bringing over 15 million people out of absolute poverty in the world, in virtually every continent, working in a number of different arenas. The founder of International Development Enterprises and now the CEO and founder of Windhorse International, he combines a rare trifecta, if you will. He's somebody who has incredibly ambitious dreams. He's someone who combines that with an indomitable, and some would even say an irreverent spirit, and yet he mixes those two things together with a tenacious pragmatism. He is somebody that is an honor to know as a colleague, as a friend. I hope that you'll enjoy hearing some of Paul's insights this afternoon. We'll obviously have time for Q&A. After Paul's presentation, there will be a benefit dinner this evening for Engineers Without Borders. It starts at 6:30 in the Carl Shields Center, which is just down Olden Street and to the right onto Prospect, and you're all invited to that as well. So when I think of Paul, I sometimes think in these combinations of threes, and the last one I'll leave you with is the three H's. Here's a person who combines humility, humor, and the right amount of hubris. And I use the term hubris because this is a guy who thinks and has proven up to this point in his career and his life that one person can make an enormous amount of difference. One person can change the lives of not tens, not dozens, not hundreds, not thousands, not hundreds of thousands, but truly millions and tens of millions of people. It's my honor to introduce you to Paul Polak.
Thank you very much, John, for that wonderful introduction. Do we have any time left for me to give my talk? What? Just show some slides. Just show some slides? Well, I've got some slides up here, but I think I've been advised that since many of you are interested in design, showing you an actual tool is not a bad way to start. So, since you said show some slides, could you come up and be a volunteer for me? Sure. Come on up.
I just happen to have some slides in my pocket.
You have some, no, I'm because of your comment, being contrarian, I'm going away from slides. Wow. Take a look at this. Okay. Can everybody see it? Now, just take it in your hand and press any one of those buttons.
Fredo, you're my older brother, and I love you. But don't ever take sides with anyone against the family again.
Okay, try another one.
Never.
I never wanted this for you. I worked my whole life. I don't apologize to take care of my family. And I refused to be a fool. Dancing on a string here by all those big shots. I don't apologize, that's my life, but I thought that when it was your time that
That's a good introduction.
you
Yeah,
with
yeah.
all the strings.
Well, that's sort of long enough. I don't know how to turn it. Well, I know how to turn it off. Here,
Take the battery out.
he talks along. Now, could you or anybody in the audience tell me what this contraption is?
Voice periscope.
A voice periscope? That's a great idea. Yeah. What's your thought?
I take it to some village where I don't know the language and I give them my message. I'm here to help you get rich.
That's pretty close. Yeah. So how would you actually use it?
I'd get someone who could speak the language to record those little sound bites.
You're right on target. Okay, so basically, this is designed by DREV, which is Design Revolution, the nonprofit that I started after I handed over IDE 3 years ago. Its mission is to create a revolution in design for the other 90%. The challenge, one of the challenges is the challenge that was tackled, in my opinion, not very successfully by One Laptop per Child. How to effectively provide information to people at the bottom of the pyramid. Without going into the problems of One Laptop per Child, a critical part of Design for the Poor is a transformative technology that is radically affordable. The target for an information technology that we set is $15. And the best way to impart information to people, as you correctly guessed, who often are illiterate, there's 800 million people who are illiterate, is a combination of visual and oral. So this is basically a talking poster. This is the electronic part of a talking poster. The one-off price, this is fresh out of our design, so this is a proof of concept prototype that we're going to beta test now. The one-off cost is $30, so I think that we can get the cost down to $9 and the retail price to $15. What you do is attach it to a poster like this one here. This is one of these colorful posters. So this is permanently attached. And then you take places in the poster that are connected to the buttons. So now you can push the buttons, the poster talks to you about safe drinking water or about illiteracy, and you can play games. So basically it's a combination of electronics and a piece of cardboard. And inside is a flash drive, so you can put it in your laptop and put another bunch of... So anything that you want to communicate, it assumes can be boiled down to 12 essential messages. This has a gigabyte of storage. And so you can put messages of a half an hour. Maybe those would be to train the trainers. But messages would be short and sweet, and it's easy to record them in your own language, and you can keep reusing this. It runs on 2 AA batteries. So I'll just pass this around, but don't steal it, please. It's a little bit hard to carry off in your pocket. What are your reactions to that? Any thoughts about it? Yes, sir.
My only question would be how practical it is for communities, like how many people would want to buy it. Yeah, how can you mass market it if you're trying to sell this to people to go communicate from one community to the next? It doesn't seem like it has as much market as selling many to a single community.
Okay, so the question is, who's going to buy it? So those are all the questions. So this is proof of concept. That's 1% of the work is done. Now we're going to test it as a tool for ag extension. And we feel that farmers, poor farmers who live on a buck a day are customers if they can add $100 a year in income. Perhaps an agrovet dealer who's selling fertilizer would be interested in buying this as an embedded service so that people will buy more seeds. We're exploring, right now we're going to test it as a way of communicating system for rice intensification in India compared with, you see what I mean? But those questions aren't answered, but we know roughly what the price point is to make something work economically. Some people feel that this will have a vast market to the UNICEFs, who then will license to create their own software, the literacy program people. But the question is, would farmers as a group be willing to rent one, much like you rent a video or a movie? Anyway, I won't go into too much detail. That's just to give you a sense of this kind of design. Now I'd like to get more into the serious part of my presentation, and those of you who want to take notes, feel free to do so. So I bet you didn't know this. So now I'd just like to introduce you visually to some of the people who have been my friends and teachers over the past 30 years. I think I mentioned before that after 25 years with IDE, which is a nonprofit operating using market creation as a key modality, I wanted to apply what I'd learned from interviewing some $3,000 a day people and walking with them through their fields to the next generation. And the next generation for me is to create a revolution in design, serving the 90% of the world's customers that are mostly ignored by current design and business. And secondly, I wanted to create a new model for village-based, high-impact, scalable international business that makes money, makes attractive profits, entering the 20 or more virgin market opportunities of a size of Henry Ford's motor car that exist in markets, the 43% of the world's population that live on less than $2 a day. I think it's a huge virgin market, and the only way to reach scale is by demonstrating market profitability and scalable impact, and doing that by integrating transformative, radically affordable technology with radically decentralized last mile supply chains. I'm not talking about design limiting to one profession. Design for me is creative problem solving. It includes architects, it includes physicians and nurses, anthropologists, business people, and engineers. I'm convinced that pretty much all the world's designers now spend all their time addressing the problems of the richest 10% of the world's customers. This is one of the remarkable products that come out as a result of it. And that we need a revolution in design to turn upside down this silly ratio. The key people that I'm talking about that are in this other 90% are the 1.1 to 1.2 billion people who live on less than $1 a day, and the 2.6 billion people who live on less than $2 a day. That's about 43% of the world's population. Rather than look at that as a pitiful, terrible problem, I look at that as a remarkable market opportunity. For me, design is a process of creative problem solving. And what I described in the book, Out of Poverty, as steps for practical problem solving, the first 3 steps are the most important. I included this in my presentation this morning. The first is go to where the action is. You can't solve a problem in a village in Bangladesh from a university setting. Secondly, talk to the people who have the problem and actually listen to what they have to say. But listening is normally interpreted by people as words. People say to me all the time, how can you talk to people in Zambia if you don't know their language? And I say the words are maybe 10% of the information. You have to learn to listen with your soul. It's not about the words. It's how people look. It's what house they live in. It's their attentiveness, their lack of attention. Just the same way this morning I said every good audience has a bullshit detector where you're making judgments about what I'm saying, whether it makes sense or not, and how much I'm embellishing. It's that bullshit detector expanded 100 times that you use to listen with your soul. The third thing is learn everything there is about the specific context of the problem. So this is a tragedy of all the money we spent on development. So many people in the large multilateral and bilateral institutions haven't spent much time or any time talking to the people who they're designing poverty programs for. And if they're treated with respect as customers, I'm not saying that solves all the problems of poverty, but it probably bypasses the major opportunity for making a big impact. John made a reference earlier about the Don't Bother trilogy. For a long time I've been talking about the Don't Bother trilogy of design, which is that if you haven't had conversations with at least 25 customers that you're designing for before you start, if it won't at least pay for itself in the first year, but normally we design things that pay for themselves at least 3 times in the first year on their purchase price. And if you can't sell at least 1 million of them, don't bother. In the last few years, in the words of Richard Nixon, the third one is inoperative. The target now is 100 million people. And I think that's entirely feasible, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to go through some stuff fairly quickly, but it's what we've learned in a practical sense about design for, particularly for people who live on less than $2 a day, about the key elements. The first thing is to set specific price targets. People who live on $2 a day can't afford a high capital cost. Sometimes a group of people can afford a high capital cost, but there are big transaction costs in getting a group of people together. So the purchase price is a critical determinant, and for everything that you do, you have to start with the target price. This is not unusual for people designing in the private sector. People designing for the other 10% always design for customers. There is usually a price target, but that strangely is not part of design for the poor. If you do a careful analysis of the functions of the tool or the service, you can identify the key contributors to cost. Here, by the way, is a low-cost drip system using a plastic gravity tank in Nepal. And you can design around each cost point by finding acceptable trade-offs. The key thing is that if you design within a framework of Western values, you often screw that up. So a lot of people say to me, well, you did treadle pumps, but I'm sure you tried to, one of the criteria is that the treadle pumps lasted at least 7 years, preferably 10. And I said, no, that's determined by the customer. Well, it turns out that a treadle pump, how long it lasts depends on the wall thickness. And we were backed in the initial stages in the treadle pump program by the Swiss. And the Swiss are very focused on quality. And we found that as many people started to buy treadle pumps, manufacturers started to jump in that we had no control over, and they made a pretty flimsy treadle pump. Some of those treadle pumps fell apart in 6 weeks by the time the person complained the manufacturer was gone. But there were treadle pumps that last 2 years. There were treadle pumps that last 4 years. We were making a treadle pump that lasted 7 years. So then we did sort of a radical thing in development. We asked the customers what they wanted. Turns out that 55% of fully informed customers prefer a 2-year treadle pump. Can you guess why?
Go to another place where there's water.
What's that?
They have to go to another place where the water is.
They have to go to another place where the water is. That's one possibility. What's another reason? Cost. Cost is king. Not always, but it's really very important. So if you live on $1 a day, you got $30. A treadle pump on a tube well is $25. If a 7-year treadle pump is $10, and a thinner walled treadle pump is $6, and it only lasts 2 years. The thing is that the whole treadle pump with a tube well costs $25. It generates on the average $100 per year in the first year. At the end of 2 years, you've got $200. You can buy whatever treadle pump you want, but if you don't have $10, you're shit out of luck. So from the point of view of the customer, even after they made the $200, quite often, because they have so many other demands on their time, they'd rather turn in their treadle pump for salvage and get another one that is $2, that is two-year treadle pump. So what we learned, to our amazement, when people were well informed, is that they picked the 2-year product 55% of the time. That changes over time, But it's been repeated in everything else. With donkey carts, they had flat tires. I provided really good lug wrenches that last 7 to 20 years, and Chinese lug wrenches that you're lucky to last a year. They pick the Chinese lug wrenches. The long-term product history, you're much better off economically to buy the long-lasting one, but if you don't have the money, if you get a flat tire, you're out of business if you don't have a lug wrench. So, and they were making $200 a month with a donkey cart. So there are all of these things that are so important, and that's why the design process, identifying trade-offs acceptable to the customer, is a critical part of design for the other 90%. Then you have a proof of concept prototype. You ask customers to use it and listen to what they tell you about it. Then you change it, and you do that again and again and again. If you develop a treadle pump or a low-cost drip system, if the low-cost drip system is developed in Nepal and you're going to move it to India, you basically field test it with a bunch of farmers, listen to what they say, what's wrong with it, change it, adapt it, and go through that process of adapting every time you move to a different major area. This is what a low-cost drip system looked like in Nepal, in a hilly area. We cut the cost of a conventional drip by 4/5, which we've been able to do with just about any technology. If you follow these steps, you can cut the cost of just about anything by half very quickly. Cutting it to 1/5 takes a little bit longer. We introduced a low-cost drip system for kitchen gardens for $3. But with the principle of earning $10 on a $3 investment, you can go up in steps to whatever size you eventually need by reinvesting part of the profits. Another principle, put tools on a radical weight loss diet. Since labor costs are so cheap in developing countries, you can pretty much predict the cost of anything by weighing it. So if you can decrease the material contribution, you lower the cost. So a very simple thing with drip irrigation. Present drip irrigation systems in the West require a long lateral line because you're covering big fields, and you have to put the water under pressure so that the flow rate is the same at the end of the line as it is at the beginning. If you're doing a drip irrigation plot that is the size of this room, you can put a 55-gallon drum in the middle, put it on a table about shoulder height, and that's plenty of pressure. If you've got low pressure, you can decrease the wall thickness to where it's just a plastic sleeve. That cuts the materials cost. You see what I mean? So you can, and you give up some uniformity under ideal conditions. The best drip irrigation system in the world gives you 90% plus uniformity from one hole to the other. That is from one emitter to the other. But you can get about 80%, 85% with just punching holes and putting little tubes in the holes. And that's plenty enough, so that's another trade-off. Make redundancy redundant. We design in the West because of lawsuits. So if you're going to build a bridge for a 10-ton truck, you better build a bridge with a capacity for a 30-ton truck. Design for the other 90%, if you're designing wall thickness for water under pressure, you keep decreasing the wall pressure till the wall bursts, and then you increase it a scotch, which is just the opposite of protecting against legal complications in the West. Move forward by designing backward. Very often in the history of the evolution of any technology, in the earlier stages of that technology, there is just the right configuration for a small farmer today. So in the evolution of grain harvesting and reaping technology. You went from a sickle to a scythe to a rake which bunched the wheat as well as cutting it, then from the bar reaper, which all the way to the combine. It turns out that most of the people in Bangladesh and the rural India on small farms still use a sickle. If you go to the cradle, which uses a scythe and bunches it, it would make a profound impact. But you could use now modern materials for a cradle out of a museum. Make it infinitely expandable like a Lego set. If you build a 250 square foot drip system for a kitchen garden that costs $3, make it possible to invest another $3, and you don't have to throw away that drip system, you just add to it, and you keep expanding it until it gets to an acre. So, I apologize for all of that information that I loaded onto you so fast. I want to give you a couple of examples here. This is the first version of a bucket kit. It uses a plastic bag hung from a post, and it irrigates a kitchen garden. That plastic bag holds exactly one bucket, the same kind of volume that a woman carries to her household. This is the same drip irrigation system using those plastic garbage cans as gravity tanks, and you can see the lateral lines to the fields. And here it is on a larger scale. I think, again, I apologize for throwing so much information at you. This might be a good time to give you a chance to ask questions or interact a little bit, and then I'll go on to the rest.
What's the crop?
Looks like tomatoes, but I'm not sure.
How were they irrigating before this?
The question is, how are they irrigating before this? 70% of water diverted for human use goes to irrigation. Some 90% of irrigation uses inefficient flood methods, surface flooding, that hasn't changed for 800 years. So generally they were either not irrigating or irrigating using surface, so that little bit of water, if it's water scarce, it doesn't go very far. So I want to go on quickly to talk about what I consider to be the major frontier now, and that is the development of the new village-based multinational. So I won't go into, this is some of them, I just want to say that you need, for design, you need, one of the biggest challenges is to design the mass marketing. So when we were marketing treadle pumps, we had to communicate with people who often don't read and write. We started with hiring troubadour groups who did songs about the treadle pump. We then created a 90-minute Bollywood movie that played to 1 million people a year. Those are all very important things. This is low-cost water storage. A key point that I want to make is that in the West, we always design for the customer and for the market. It's critical to design for the market. When you're designing a tool, engineers particularly often fall in love with the technology part. But unless you design for the price point and for the specific use of the customer, you're not going to be able to commercially adapt it. I have a section here about courses in universities that this is another whole set of experiences where we created multidisciplinary courses, teams from 4 students each from a different discipline, went to places like Myanmar to the village to listen to customers, designed tools, a transformative tool or strategy, a business plan persuasive to venture capital investors, and a communications package. I think that courses like that are a real opportunity for students here and in other places to learn how to make a difference. And some of these student teams have gone on to make private companies, like D-Light came from the Stanford School. There's a project called Embrace. This is David Klaus operating a complicated sprinkler system in Myanmar. This is Embrace, which is a $25 premature infant incubator. This is DREV, the organization that I started. It's a $150 blue LED-based phototherapy device that beats the $3,000 phototherapy device. This is for neonatal jaundice. The initial test shows that it's much more effective than the Western $3,000 device, and it's much more easy to use in developing countries. These are the kinds of things that can happen. So, quick transition. 3 billion new customers are waiting for a revolution in how big business designs, prices, and markets its products. So I want to give as an example, let's see, it's 4:15, so we started at 3:30, right?
A little bit later.
Yeah, so we've got a little bit of time. I want to just outline to you an example of the new multinational corporation that I'm working on. This is a company that is called Windhorse International. It's funded entirely through venture capital, and it's purely for profit. It is not going to, I know that, for instance, you're involved with Results. Mohammed Yunus believes in the social business where the investors don't make any money. I don't like that very much because that's a big subsidy. I think that it's possible to achieve a social mission and build the social mission into the mission of the company and make a very attractive profit serving people who live on less than $2 a day. I want to briefly outline what the first company is doing, and then I'm looking forward to the discussion. There are 1 billion people in the world who don't have access to safe drinking water. If you really want to learn about them as customers, you have to take into account that most of them are in rural areas in developing countries. And the great majority of the people without access to safe drinking water live in small villages with 100 to 300 families at most. The question is how you can provide safe drinking water to people in small villages. There are a number of different technologies available to do that. One of the people I was talking to you were talking about making distilled water. There's ultraviolet, which sterilizes water. There's reverse osmosis, which removes all the impurities. But when you're talking about creating a business, you have to first start with a transformative, radically affordable technology. So the technology we're using is electrochlorination. It's been around for 100 years. It's been used in large water purification systems. It basically passes electric current through a mild solution of salt, 5% salt solution. When you do that, you create, because salt is sodium chloride, you create a mixture of chlorine-based oxidants, so you can chlorinate the water just like we do. Now that does not take out arsenic. So the basic parameters in terms of affordability of that technology when it's miniaturized is you get a little piece of equipment the size of a bread box. You use 12 volts of electricity at 4 amps. In a day you use less than $1 worth of electricity, less than 25 cents worth of salt to mix the salt water. The capital cost of the equipment is $250. It runs on plug-in electricity, so you put it in a market town with electricity, but electricity is unreliable, so you need a car battery, basically, which charges when the electricity is on and runs the thing when the electricity is off. Say that that whole thing costs $500. So with a capital cost of $500 and a daily operating cost of less than $1.50, you produce enough chlorine-based oxidant to sterilize 80,000 liters of water a day, which is enough for 8,000 families. Now that's a transformative technology, but as a private company you can never make money with that because you can't protect intellectual property. And the problem is, if you've got 80,000 liters of water in one place, water is heavy, how the hell are you going to move it to people in scattered villages? So basically what we've done is we've contracted with small shops. There's an unlimited number of small shops around the world. These shopkeepers have a hole-in-the-wall shop. They sell things like bananas, cigarettes, little packages of smoke, spices, cookies, candies. Maybe they make $3-4 a day. We are working in eastern India with 500 million people. In eastern India, less than 2% of the people use latrines. They basically shit in the fields. And in the monsoon season, 1/3 of the land about is underwater so that fecal contaminants wash into shallow groundwater, which is the source of their drinking water. They get drinking water from ponds, from shallow tube wells, and from open wells. Fairly inexpensive, but they spend between $25, they tell us, and $250 a year to treat the illnesses they get from bad water. So we basically don't move the water, we move the water purifier liquid, which is 20 liters a day. And each of 2 staff go around on motorcycles to the shops. The shopkeepers, we build a 3,000 liter tank outside the shop. The shopkeeper fills it with contaminated water from his or her own well. We add chlorine, mix it up, test it for chlorine residual, and then the shopkeeper sells that water and makes a 25% markup. The gross income from that $500 capital investment is $200 a day. So we figure you can bring about $25 of that to the bottom line. It's a very profitable business, but it requires being able to scale it up very quickly. We're going to, in the first year, do it in blocks of 50 villages, 1 a month. In the second year, it'll be 150 villages a month. By the end of the third year, we'll be making regular deliveries to some 6,000 to 7,000 villages. Within 10 years, that'll be 400,000 villages in 20 countries. That's, again, a quick bird's eye view. Do you have any clarification questions about this? Yes?
I'd like to ask you about your statement that it's possible to achieve a social mission and also realize a profit.
Yeah.
I'm not a business person or an engineer, but I'm totally in favor of offering technology that helps the developing world completely behind that. I have a small sort of thorn in my conscience about the first world making a profit off of it. Would you mind explaining the way you are sort of unpacking your ethics about this country and business people in this country making a profit off of things that help the developing world?
It's unethical to make money. For instance, let's make it personal. Right now, I own 95% of the company. I expect to make money, and I, in fact, want to optimize making money, not that the making money is that important to me. I think the marginal value of a lot of money is not very great. But the real value of my making out like a bandit, just to be very sensitive to your concern, is that that's the only way that big business will come in. Right now, big business sees emerging markets as not profitable. They're involved in corporate social responsibility, which I think in many cases is cosmetic. The only way to bring big business into emerging markets is to make money. So actually, the ultimate impact of my making out like a bandit is it has a very high social impact. Building the social mission in, let's take the example of this company. If I can, and my colleagues, and by the way, it's not just Western people making money. The shopkeepers are making money. We have Indian staff who are getting performance bonuses. We have people on bicycles making home deliveries. So a lot of people are making money. But the key path to scale is market forces. So I don't feel, if I use the money on drugs and women, I have no problem with that. Because making the money will bring business in and will make a huge impact for the poor. So where the money goes, now I have another plan which will follow this one. And that's what I call the 100 million plan. I feel that there are opportunities now for 20 Henry Ford-sized companies making very good profits, serving bottom billion customers. So I want to invest only in companies that are capable of reaching 100 million people who live on less than $2 a day at a time and make money doing it. I'm willing to take risks with that money. You see what I'm saying? So,
So you would say it's a pragmatic necessity for it to be a for-profit business as opposed to non-profit?
it's not a necessity. It's the best way I know to reach scale. In the same way, I'm against human rights. Because all of the initiatives that are based on human rights have screwed things up. In South Africa, they believe access to safe drinking water is a human right. And as a result, they've spent a lot of time figuring out that each person is entitled to 250 liters of water a day. That means you can go to the desert and the government is supposed to bring you 200. It's not possible, and it hasn't worked. And it often ends up with a bunch of government subsidized programs that screw everything up. Yes?
I'd like to say something in addition to that, in addition to everything Paul said. I think it's not immediately obvious that making money off of selling things to the developing world is ethically or morally reprehensible, just because if you talk to many of these people, they much rather buy something from you than get something for free, because if you donate something to someone, it's immediately creating this political sort of dichotomy between the giver and the receiver. Whereas if you're doing business with me, I think I'm much less likely to be even suspicious of your ulterior motives and so on and so forth. So I think if you actually go on ground, and as long as the price is fair and competitive, I'd much rather buy something than be given it for free. And
so,
in some ways that's also democratic as well, because I have the choice to buy it rather than being imposed upon. So.
By the way, we're selling this water for a little over 4 cents for 10 liters. That's enough for a family for a day, and that's considerably less than they're paying now, often in larger lump sums, to treat the illnesses their family get from drinking bad water. So the question is, what's the price? If I can make money at 4.4 cents a day, and people are buying that water and they're pleased with it, what's the problem? Yes?
Can you sell the premises to the governments, who then have relationships already with these villages and people?
Can you sell the premises to the government? In my opinion, if you do that, you really screwed it all up. The government has been putting in hand pumps for years in these villages. I visited one village that had 7 hand pumps. Of those, 2 were working because they were not owned by anybody, so when they broke, nobody fixed them. One of the 2 was contaminated, so there was 1 of them working out of 7. Talking with the villagers themselves about, one villager said water should be free, and I object strenuously. The other said, if you bring it here and we pay for it, if it's what we need, everybody in this village will patronize your business. Of course, they haven't. They're sitting around waiting to see if it really works. But the villagers themselves are not against business solutions because a lot of the donations and the government solutions haven't worked. Yes?
I was wondering if you could give me an example of a technology that came out of IDE that failed completely and why.
Sure. I'm a technology that came out of IDE and failed completely. No. One of the things that I really was dedicated to was river transport. In Nepal, a lot of people walk 12 days with 200 kilo loads on their backs. We explored introducing jet barges from whitewater rivers in Idaho. We built and designed a jet barge, which is really a rapidly going water ski. So it goes in whitewater rivers, which is where a lot of these remote villages are. We did a river exploration phase where we proved 500 kilometers of river to be navigable, not considered navigable before, with a jet boat that is capable of carrying 5 tons cargo. But we used world-class operators. When we tried to turn that into a commercial river transport company that was viable, it failed because the costs of modifying the rivers to make them more navigable, the challenges of creating local people who had the same level of skill, and the problems of the rivers. When it rained, they could go up by 8 feet in 2 hours because there are no dams on those rivers. And finally, there's a lot of floating sediment in that water, which makes the impellers last 40 hours, no, it was 400 hours instead of 4,000 hours. All of that made it not feasible. There was tremendous political pressure to continue that because a village that had a 3-day walk, now that we had the jet barge, really wanted to continue. So there was pressure to do it as a subsidized service. We basically sank the jet boat to prevent that because we don't believe that in the end that would be counterproductive. I can give you many more. Did you have some doubt that we would have some failures?
I mean, I would expect that any time you were innovating and adjusting your model, that there would be some failures.
Oh, there's a lot of failures, and you'll learn more from the failures than from the successes. Yes, sir.
What can you tell us about cook stoves? There's a lot of literature now, particularly in the climate change community, related to carbon emissions, but also health. That the new solar-powered cook stoves and some others that are technologically breakthroughs that are really promising. Is that an area of interest of yours?
Everything is an area of interest. Part of the thing is, the reason I do this is I'm insanely curious about everything. So I've got an opinion, and if I don't, I'll make one up. On cook stoves, I assume you're talking about the solar ones or the solar ovens?
Yeah.
And there's a number of movements all over the world about cook stoves. One of the most successful in terms of volume, in fact, one of the most successful things that the Schumacher's group, ITDG, did was a Juco stove in Kenya. It sold hundreds of thousands, which is nothing else they ever did sold in volume. And that's because it was $5. But that's not the most efficient stove. Now, as an example, CSU has a cook stove project. They got a big grant, I think, from BP or Shell. I'm not sure which one. Is it BP? So you're familiar with this whole area. So they've got a very good cook stove. They're selling 8,000 a month. In my humble opinion, is that I was talking about price. The price is too high. They're very much addicted to carbon credits, and they don't want to sacrifice some of the characteristics that will get carbon credits to bring the price down. The sweet spot in the market, in my opinion, in India is $15. I think you can get there, but you have to make trade-offs between.
For $100, but they're hoping to get them down to $25.
What's that?
The solar ones are now at $100, but they're hoping to
Yeah.
get them down. They're worried about cultural reaction too. That it says
The solar ones, there are solar ones that are cheaper than $100. Solar, but the problem is that you need the sun to cook. And a lot of people eat their big meal when the sun is down. That doesn't totally block it, because you can do stuff like cooking beans over a long period of time. But the cultural patterns don't fit, and I've never seen solar ovens as being culturally adaptable. And when I try to change people's eating habits, that's a tough one. People often say to me in Eastern India, why don't you build latrines instead? To change their defecation habits is a much bigger problem than, so I think that a key part of the stove movement is to build an affordable stove, and if you do that, and it's efficient, and it's cost effective. But that said, the fuel has to cost something. If fuel doesn't cost anything, people are not going to be motivated because of our interest in the environment. They're going to be motivated by more efficient cooking, savings of money, and if they're paying for wood. But the price point has to be attractive. Does that make sense to you? Yes?
What about fecal contaminant? Is there a way of reducing it once it's out of the body, or even while it's in the body?
When it's in the body, no. Bacterial action is what digests food. So you've got E. coli.
You're always going to have staph and...
Well, you're going to have things that make people sick, and the problem is not everybody has that. But if you've got typhoid and you poop on the ground, you're spreading typhoid, where if somebody grows lettuce in that ground and it touches the leaves, anybody who eats that will get it. So
is there any research on...
There's a lot of research. You can easily sterilize poop. If you put a what's the thing, the plastic container that
digester.
Yeah, but housewives here, it's a pyramid Tupperware. If you make a big Tupperware container under a one-hole latrine, you poop in that. First of all, you got to separate out the urine. The urine is 3/4 or 2/3 of excretion, and it is sterile. And
Can you reuse urine?
Urine has real value as a soluble fertilizer. So the first thing is to take advantage of the economic value of urine. Then that reduces the fecal load. If you put that fecal load in a Tupperware container and put the lid on and let it sit for 6 months, it's sterile. So those are all things that you could do. I think that the most attractive income opportunity with excreta is to make use of the economic value of urine. Just in replacement for fertilizer, the average person pees 520 kilos a year. That's pure, soluble 5,512 fertilizer. That has an economic value, if you were going to buy the fertilizer, about $50. If you translate it into vegetables, it's $300. So if you can make money from peeing in a bottle, there's real opportunities there. But the real contamination is from feces, and you either have to get people to use latrines. In other countries, we've been able to design affordable latrines that people pay for. It's the same principle, but not in Eastern India. The cultural things are tough. Does that give you a sense? Yes?
In demonstrating the profit behind this business endeavor, have you attracted any other big businesses?
Oh, no, this is too early. We're just in the beta test phase, but...
Repeat the question.
With the profit in this company, have you attracted any other big businesses? We're too early to do that, but there's a yes and no. Have we attracted other big businesses? Big business is sort of interested in this. One of the people that came with me to India is a guy who's the head of Ball Aerospace, which is $1 billion company at the very opposite end of the technology continuum. We're exploring meeting with Pepsi and with the CEO of Pepsi. Another person is connecting us to Walmart. It's too early, though. I want to be involved with big business at a point where we demonstrate a profit, and where the place it'll make an impact is where big business has to enter this market to remain economically competitive. And we're too early to, and of course, there's big risks in this. Anytime that you're creating a totally new market, They're big risks, but if you're successful, the rewards are also disproportionately big.
Paul, I'm sure, will be available for a while afterwards, but in fairness...
Can we give this guy one...
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, so for the water filtration business you're doing, you've obviously kind of primed the environment and talked to the village and advertised there a great deal, and you're talking about expanding it. I think you said like 10,000 villages.
Yeah.
So how do you plan on expanding the advertisement and making sure that it's actually going to be accepted in those 10,000 other villages? Is that going to take a lot of work?
Well, we're shooting for 400,000 villages, actually. But yeah, a big part of the initiative is branding and marketing. So we've hired Idiom, which is a major national branding and design firm in India. They're leading our branding effort. Since you can't defend the intellectual property, you can't defend the brand. So we're putting a big focus on branding. One of the things that we're working on is using a projection microscope, which I bought one for $400 in this country. It has a camera. It puts a signal from the camera into a laptop. You can use a projector and project it on the wall, so people can bring samples of the water they're drinking, and we can show them the living animals in the water and what it looks like after you treat the water. That seems to be another organization. Water Health International has used that with great success and says that that's the most successful marketing strategy they use. But we use all kinds of things. You saw that school rally. Our business associates do things. Doctors do things. We're experimenting with marketing and branding is everything that you do. It's not just a logo. So the people who come and treat the water wear a uniform. The people who deliver the water wear a uniform. We brand the jerry cans. We want to have a presence in the village that's associated with reliability and health. And that ultimately, like the only thing of real value that Coca-Cola has is its brand.
So you got a very small taste of this guy's Brett. Last year, Atlantic Monthly scoured the world, and they had a special issue called 27 Brave New Thinkers of the World. And you just heard from number, what, 22 or 21? I can't remember what it is. But
21 and a half.
21 and a half, yeah. Paul, thanks so much for coming. We
Thank you.
Princeton University's Keller Center, educating leaders for a technology-driven society.